Happy Pride Month, everybody, from Prince George's County Memorial Library System. We're here for our Up and Out program, which is a program where we invite LGBTQ plus community members to come in and talk to our queer teens and their allies. My name is Rebecca Oxley. My pronouns are she, they. I am the librarian 3 at the Greenbelt branch. And I am delighted to introduce our guest for today, Georgia McCandlish. Their pronouns are they, them. Georgia is a 28-year-old queer, non-binary tattooer, printmaker, and illustrator. They are originally from Hyattsville, Maryland, here in Prince George's County, and they currently co-own Fruit Camp, a queer-centered tattoo and art studio collective space in Baltimore. They are an avid reader of speculative fiction, and their work is heavily inspired by writers like Octavia Butler, N.K. Jemisin, and Tamara Pierce. Welcome, Georgia.
Thanks for having me.
I understand you have a personal connection to our library system, is that right?
Yeah, I grew up in Hyattsville, going to the Hyattsville branch library, which when I was growing up, I think it's been under construction, but iconically known for having a UFO entryway that I was totally obsessed with.
That's awesome. And we were just mentioning to Georgia that we are selling some Hyattsville t-shirts that feature the iconic UFO with some little alien library users. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started. Georgia, can you tell me about your background?
Sure. So my primary job right now is I do tattoos full time, but I studied art and fine arts in college and majored in printmaking and women, gender, and sexuality studies and minored in African American studies. And I've done a lot of weird jobs. I was a teacher in an after school program, and I walked dogs, and I delivered flowers. I worked on a lot of political campaigns and done a lot of community organizing. And we started Fruit Camp like about, I guess, early 2020. So I've been working at this business and collective space for the last year and a half.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, okay, you mentioned you studied art. I also studied art in my undergrad, so definitely am feeling that. When did you know that you wanted a career specifically in art?
I mean, I've been drawing my whole life, so it was definitely always like a passion of mine. I think when I was in 8th grade, I like wrote on some letter to my future self that I wanted to be an artist and a marine biologist. But I definitely decided to pursue art in school, but I also wanted to study other things, so that's why I went and was somewhere I could double major and sort of have flitted around on, but always retaining an art practice and making print and selling things.
That's awesome. What art style or genre or period or culture do you mostly identify with?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think the style that I work in, both in tattoos and in illustration, is heavily influenced by the long history of printmaking and as kind of like a way that people speak socially to other people, and also comics and lots of sort of mythological illustration. I sort of embarrassingly to me, one of my favorite periods of fine art is the Renaissance, and especially the sort of lesser known and feminist women painters of the Renaissance.
Like Savannah
But I would
Rolla,
say a lot of my style is influenced by printmaking. So my tattoo style is reminiscent of woodcuts and etchings, and then definitely inflected by a lot of graphic novels.
Oh, that's great. Not to put you on the spot, but can you tell us some of your favorite graphic novels?
Sure. Let's see. One of my favorite ones that I read recently was On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden, which is just like such a sweet, queer, intergalactic, beautifully drawn, beautiful color schemes, boarding school story. And then also one of my favorite graphic artists is Michael DeForge, like so many weird, freaky, sort of nihilistic but funny stories that he's produced.
Awesome. We'll have to make sure that we get them here at the library. I'm also a graphic literature nut. That's what I specialize in. So I think it's really awesome how your love of literature like kind of helps to inform your art style. Do you have a favorite artwork?
Like by someone else?
Yeah, or you can tell me about your favorite artwork of your own too. That would be awesome.
Well, okay, here's a tattoo I'll show people, which is on my arm, which is a rendition by another queer tattoo artist of Judith and her maidservant slaying Holofernes, which is a Renaissance painting by Artemisia Gentileschi. And I was lucky enough to get to see it in person in Florence when I was 19. And the story of that whole painting and of that painter herself is traumatic and heartbreaking and amazing and really vengeful. So it's one of my favorite, sort of like both the original story of Judith decolonizing her people by slaying this general, and the way that it's been taken up by people like Artemisia Gentileschi and people like Kehinde Wiley. I just think it's like a really beautiful piece.
Wow, that is honestly one of the most amazing tattoos I've ever seen. I'm so jealous that you got to see that work in person. I remember studying that and loving Artemisia's self-portraits of herself. She's like painting with all the different paintbrushes. That is so cool. I love that. Thank you.
She also was just so inspirational. Like, this person was the first woman admitted to the Florence School for Arts, and she got super famous and was really successful. And there were just not very many sort of like women craftspeople and painters at the time who were doing that. Really cool.
Wow, that is awesome. I love that. Well, can you tell us a little bit about the story of how Fruit Camp came to be?
Sure. Yeah, Fruit Camp is my tattoo shop and the studio space. I'm actually there right now. I'm in a room that we use for silkscreen works, and me and my co-owner, Emmy Holler, were living together in a DIY warehouse space about 5 years ago that sadly was condemned and evicted in 2016. And Emmy was tattooing and had gifted me a machine and taught me to tattoo. And then they moved out of town. And I was like, all right, Emmy, when you come back, we're going to open our queer tattoo shop, because there's a lot of tattoo spaces in Baltimore. Not a lot of them are that friendly to self-taught artists, and a lot of them are primarily run by cis straight men. So they are not particularly friendly places to either learn in or to work in or to bring my clientele to. So in early 2020, we opened Fruit Camp to be a space that was centered on queer people and other people marginalized by like predominantly white and cis het spaces in the city. So we have 4 tattoo artists, myself and me included, and we have, I think, 7 other creative practitioners in our studios upstairs.
That's fabulous that you have not just found that camaraderie, amongst other people, but that you have used your energies to really create a space that is open for everybody. How is being an artist integral to thriving as a queer person?
I mean, on a personal level, I think that drawing has, for a long time, really been like the space that I use to express myself and process and mimic or figure out stories, narratives, and visual imagery that I'm aligned with or attracted to. It's also been a way that I've connected with a lot of other queer people and formed queer artist community in my life. But I also don't think that, I don't think it's necessarily, you don't have to be creative or an artist to be a queer person. Obviously, there are people, like, we are everywhere. We are in anything you can think of, whether you see us there or not. I think there's something really magical about being in a creative field and being self-employed that lets me be really visible and out, and also sort of name myself and my community and create a space for it. But that doesn't mean that queer people are not also in STEM or any other kind of space or field. It's just that not all of those are as friendly to us expressing our identities so loudly.
Thank you. That's a really important issue that we should bring up, is that queer people are everywhere and we have always been there. It's just that the world is sort of waking up and seeing us exist in our own spaces unapologetically and unbothered. Is there anything about the art industry that has been particularly challenging to you as a queer artist, or has been challenging for another queer artist that you know?
You know, I think when I was in school and like learning about pathways towards becoming a fine artist, I was incredibly turned off by how commercialized so much of that world is. And at the same time, I was also making a lot of work that I found that was really personal and that had to do with my my gay feelings and my experience of my body and my relationships. And I was told a lot of times by professors and mentors that talking about those things was alienating and that it was too personal and that it wasn't inviting or sellable. And I think that there has been a wave in culture to actually start to value and direct towards narrative and identity-based art, for better or for worse. But I think that that was rather discouraging, but also was a signifier of kind of a space I didn't really want to work in, which was one that forced me to compartmentalize a lot of my values and my politics that are rooted in my queer identity, but aren't the entirety of it. Yeah.
Thanks. That's definitely a great answer. And yes, it is really heartening to see the rise of like more identity art. I love to see it, and I think to all of our young artists out there, you know, you should not be afraid to tell your story through art, or to tell somebody else's story that may be quote unquote less palatable. It's not less palatable. We see you there. How has founding a queer affirming tattoo company changed your life and your work?
I mean, I'm so much busier now than I used to be because I have to run a business. But it's also given me so many opportunities. Like, I feel like very quickly Fruit Camp has become a well-known kind of like cornerstone of like a queer scene and a queer community in Baltimore, and I feel really grateful for that. I've been here for 7 years too, so like that is partially because of like how rooted I feel here. And I think honestly, I worked so many different jobs that were underpaid and exploitative and not necessarily like speaking to my passions or the parts of myself that I wanted to develop, or the types of projects and spaces that I felt excited about seeing in this city. And I feel very lucky and privileged to be in a position to execute something like Fruit Camp with a really robust community of friends and supporters and people who have different kinds of like stakes in the space. So I think it's really created like a focus for a lot of things for me. So much of what I do on a day-to-day basis now is focused around this space and making sure it runs smoothly, but also that it is welcoming and kind of trying to get as many humans to be a part of it as possible.
Absolutely. Well, anybody who's in the Baltimore area, definitely stop by and check it out. And if you are looking for a affirming, welcoming place to have art added to your body, you should definitely check out Fruit Camp Tattooing. Well, we did kind of touch a little bit about how LGBTQ plus representation in the art world is improving or it's making some strides. Why do you personally feel that that representation is still so critical to promote in the art world?
That's a good question, because I'm not always sure. I'm not always sure that it is. Like, there's part of me that doesn't want to see or be seen by straight people. But I think that I feel really inspired. I'm 28, so I'm a mid-range millennial, and I feel so inspired by the way I see folks younger than me presenting themselves online and sharing their works, and also how almost passe it is to be queer. Like, even when I was a teenager, I didn't have a lot of what my partner calls possibility models in front of me of adult queer people and queer artists to sort of like look at and understand that this is a way of being. And it wasn't until I was searching for it online as like a young adult and a college student that I was kind of encountering the spectrum of possibilities for what my gender and my sexuality could look like and could mean, and the ways that it could be resistant to the sort of like dominant hegemonic forces of heterosexuality and patriarchy and capitalism and white supremacy. Big words, but like all things that are so alienating. So representation feels important to me in that it shows us alternate ways of being in the world. And I think it's important that it actually show us those alternate ways, that it not just replicate what we're already seeing, but it's gay now. Like when I see commercialized ads about, oh, Tevas made gay sandals, oh, Uggs made, you can tell what Instagram is showing me, it's a lot of shoes, made rainbow Uggs. It's like, nothing about that is queer, but queer people talking about themselves and making work from their experience is like very powerful. And the broad variety of our experiences and our embodiments, I think, are really important to see, and especially really important for young folks to see.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. There's so many important things that you mentioned in that answer. One being intersectionality, and the intersectionality of the problems that are preying on our society and on the health of our society, and that these problems need to be taken on as a whole, not necessarily as just like these silos of like, I'm in this club, so I'm going to do this work. There's work for us to do everywhere. I know that when I was younger, which was a long time ago, and I was looking at queer artists who I was looking up to, they always were kind of on the self-destructive side, or they had a lot of problems. And so that was like the impression that I got, was just like, you're going to have a lot of problems. You're going to have a lot of obstacles. So I do love the fact that you are like this shining example of like somebody who's out there living their truth, creating space for other people and protecting that space, and just sort of like knocking down those boundaries. And then the third thing that I really appreciate that you talked about, which I think some of our young people may not be aware of, is rainbow washing. And that is during the month of June. A lot of companies will come out with their rainbows and say, we love you and we see you and we support you. Please buy our stuff. And it's just part of the capitalist machine. We're all guilty. I'm wearing rainbow glasses right now. So like, obviously it's a marketing campaign that does work in some ways, but like I specifically looked for, okay, did queer people design these glasses? Yes. Okay, great. That's something I want to support, not necessarily just walking into Target and picking something off the rack. And definitely do your homework out there. To all of our watchers, is that you'll see big corporations come out with like a big rainbow campaign for June, but then they're actually putting money in the pockets of politicians who are creating legislation that holds us down, exploits us, or excludes us. So it's really good to know where your money is going. That was awesome. Thank you so much for bringing up all those important points. What advice do you have for our aspiring queer artists watching the program?
Oh gosh. Okay, this is really cheesy, y'all, but like, don't give up. Like, on especially on your creative works. Like, I think there's a lot of dynamics that we all encounter both online with algorithms and likes and this sort of like validation machine, and also in institutional spaces like in at high schools and in colleges and in classes where there are going to be all these made up rules about what you can and can't do, and what the thing that you put out in the world is supposed to look like, and how it's supposed to behave, and how it's supposed to live or sell or be valued. And like, all of those rules are completely made up. And I know that like I struggled as like a 18 to 25-year-old, feeling like a lot of creative block when I had been drawing my whole life and journaling through drawing, because I was afraid of these like rules that I had learned, um, going against what I actually wanted to do. One of the funnest things about being a tattoo artist now is that in some ways I feel like my drawing style has gotten to regress a little bit and go back to really celebrating some of the things that I loved as a middle schooler and high schooler, like fantasy genre, science fiction, comics, things that I was told were lowbrow when I got older.
Right.
And so I think like not giving up because of those things, not giving up because you are encountering hate or homophobia or people telling you what and how you should be and what and how you can name yourself. Like, it's fun to learn. I think it's fun to learn skills and craft sometimes from institutions or from other people, but you like holding on to your like inner voice and your drive around art is really powerful and hard to do. So hold on.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Georgia. And I just want to point out to everybody who's watching, if you're not aware, there's a great project called the It Gets Better Project, where all different people who from all different backgrounds, all different types of jobs, basically send messages of hope out to queer youth. And some of it is just career advice, and some of it has to do with like problems that are particular to queer people. And then we also have made some of those videos at the library, which you can check out on our Pride Heritage page, which is pgcmls.info/pride. So,
okay, the
Georgia,
other thing I would just say is like, find other queer people. It's so great. We make excellent friends. We're really good at community. We throw great parties. We have really cool fashion. It's so much better over here. Like, find other queer people, because that's like one of the most magical things also about growing up and like making your own social scape.
Hard agree to that. So can you tell us what is next for you personally as an artist, and also for the future of Fruit Camp Tattooing?
Great question. On a really micro level, I was mostly doing tattoos using only black ink for the last couple of years, and I'm starting to branch out into learning how to do color work. So I'm feeling very excited about that. And also, the room I'm sitting in right now is our silkscreen room, and I'm really excited to get this area of our studio more up and running, so I can kind of like get back into some of my printmaker roots. Fruit Camp as a whole, we've only been open a year and a half, and we are kind of still like steaming ahead with somewhat limited participation because of COVID-19. But I think in the next year or two, we are hoping to add a few more tattoo artists and have people coming in from out of town to guest spot. And we also are going to be thinking about whether we want to stay in this building or if we are going to try to move into a space that is houses more collective businesses and has like maybe like longer and more ethical relationships with our landlords. And yeah, personally, I'm very involved in a mutual aid group in my neighborhood, and have been considering continuing to tattoo and going to grad school to acquire some legal analysis skills to help out with the organizing work that I do. I'm a double Sagittarius, so I can't just pick one thing to do it all.
Nor should you. So we still have a few minutes left with Georgia. If anybody has any questions that they would love for them to answer, please go ahead and throw that in the chat, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. In the meantime, are there any other inclusive spaces in the Baltimore area that you might recommend for young people to help find that family?
Yeah, let me think about it. I mean, there's some really amazing organizations doing all kinds of different work. One group that I would spotlight that is a little bit of a trick answer because they do rent space with us is Queer Skate Baltimore. They're like a group of young, predominantly POC skaters, and they love to host like meetups to get more folks into skating who may otherwise, skateboarding and roller skating, who may otherwise feel intimidated by just going to the skate park or picking up a board. Queer Skate Baltimore and also a sort of twin organization called Solidarity Skateboards are both really sweet and youth oriented. Also, Be More Safe Haven is an organization oriented around supporting trans women of color who may or may not be sex workers. And the Yes Center is a youth drop-in center. It's called the Youth Empowerment Society, and both of them are just one neighborhood over from us, and like really, they do really powerful work. They're both nonprofits. Oh, and the last one is Make Studio, which not specifically queer, but is a art studio that like provides facilities to disabled youth and adults to make really amazing creative works. That I have a friend who works at. It's really great.
Wow, you just have your hands in so many amazing like equity and inclusion projects. It's really inspiring to see a young professional who has taken their passions and then, you know, not only like living the dream yourself, but you're showing basically everybody else how to do it. So thank you so much. Not sure if we have any questions.
I'm definitely not perfect.
None of us are, but we're still going to celebrate you. Toot toot. Another question I had was that I've never lived in Baltimore, but I've heard that Baltimore is very queer friendly. What's been your experience like just, you know, being a young queer person living in Baltimore?
I definitely find that to be true. I went to school in St. Louis, Missouri, and then I moved to Baltimore after I graduated, and partially did that because I knew that there were queer people here. And also because I'm from Maryland and from Hyattsville and missed the area. I think it's a really magical city for queer community. I mean, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of dynamics at play, and there's also like a lot of systemic disinvestment in the city. But the community really shows up for each other, and it's big enough that there's stuff happening, but small enough that it's very easy to start to meet folks and get to know them. I'm a total extrovert, so I just like chat at anybody at any time. But I do think it feels particularly special to me and has been really easy to root down deeply into, and to show up for my friends and feel shown up for. Yeah, and it's like Baltimore is so queer. You can go to any neighborhood and you will see another gay person at the corner store, whether it feels like that's the area you're in or not. It's amazing.
it's kind of how I felt when I moved to DC. I'm from New York, so I grew up like stomping around the Village and Christopher Street to like see what the older queer people were doing. And then I moved out of New York, and I just felt like, are there no queer people left on the earth? And then I moved to the DC region, and I was like, okay, this is wonderful. I'm finding so many of my people.
I also
But just
want
like
to
we
just,
have
I also would just shout out in particular that I'm a white person and I grew up in Hyattsville, but Baltimore also just has a really amazing queer Black history of organizing and of spaces that is not even necessarily like I as a white transplant, like I can't even see all of it and the edges of it, but that community and that history, legacy, and ancestry is the culture maker of this whole region, whether it's being credited or not. And you feel it. You feel it in town all the time, and it's amazing. And those are the people who are also making some of the most incredible, cutting edge, and inclusive spaces out here. So,
wow, thank you so much for highlighting that for us. So, I mean, Queer History Month is every month of the year, but during October, you can expect that if you're interested in intersectionality of LGBTQ plus history and culture, there will be a lot of great programs for you. I also want to highlight that we have our big Teen Pride event tomorrow from 5 to 7 p.m., where it's going to take place on our Discord. And you can contact us to get a secure Discord link if you are a teen, ages 13 to 18. If you're younger than that, you would need your parents' permission. And we'll also be showing everything on YouTube. So we will have Leah Johnson and some other authors. We'll have community partners. We'll have a member of the Gen Out Gay Youth Chorus from DC to come talk with us. Crafts, we'll play Among Us. It's going to be very chill. So I hope that everybody will make it and bring a friend. Allies are super welcome. Looks like we still don't have any audience questions because you did such a fantastic job of putting all of the most important information out there. So Georgia, I just want to say thank you again for making time in your super busy schedule to come and talk to our teens. Really appreciate it.
thank you.
So,
I also love teens and used to teach art in an after school program, and I hope that I get to work with youth again. It's like my favorite thing.
Mine too. Thank you everybody so much for tuning in. Just to keep in mind, our Summer at Your Library kickoff is this Saturday at all branches from 1 to 4 p.m. So you can go get registered, get some swag, and just take part of the festivities. So happy Pride, everybody. We will see you soon. See you at the library.